The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
All right, Urmi, it's all yours.
Okay, thank you. Hello, and welcome to the Northeast Regional Epilepsy Group's webinar on Stress Management 101. My name is Urmi Vaidya. I'm a clinical social worker working with the Northeast Epilepsy Group, and I'm going to take a little bit of your time trying out some new techniques in regards to stress management. Today's topic is obviously helpful to everyone, but we find that many of our patients who are dealing with chronic illness find their lives to be quite stressful. So today's presentation will focus more on active changes that you can make in your life to help you deal with stress and managing the stress. Okay. So one often asks, how can you manage or prevent or cope with stress? And for some people, the answer I get back often is that there's really nothing you can do about stress, that it's just part of life and that it's something you have to deal with. But the reality is you have a lot more control in managing your stress than you might actually think. And for many people, just realizing that you are in control of your life and the stress is the foundation of stress management. And I'll explain a little bit. In this presentation, we're basically focusing on the idea that by taking charge of your thoughts, emotions, scheduling, and the way you deal with problems, you can find that you'll be able to manage some of the outside stressors that often. And the first step to doing that is to identify the source of stress in your life. And for some people, it's easy. They can come up with a list of 10 to 12 things that are just causes of stress and inducing stress. But sometimes they're not always as obvious, and you tend to overlook your own role in the way you handle the stress and your thoughts and your feelings that can play a part as well. So, for example, many people will explain stress away as a temporary thing. Oh, it's only the stage of life that I'm in, or what's going on with me right now. Some others, people will define stress as just a part of your life or your work or your home, and there's no getting around it. Some people that say it's part of their personality. Many people blame stress on other people or outside events. And some people just accept stress as normal and unexceptional, meaning that it's nothing worth thinking about because it's just always a part of their life. In all of these explanations, you're sort of dismissing the role that you play in maintaining the stress. So although it may be an outside force that's causing you some of your trials or your tribulations, when you look at stress in these ways, you tend to take away the role that you play in managing it. And our philosophy is that until you accept the responsibility, you're really going to think that this is outside of your control. So what we want to do is keep away or keep track of the ways in which stress impact your life. And one of the things you can do is keep something called a stress journal. I know for many of our epileptic patients, we ask them to keep seizure journals, and there are apps for that on many different phone systems and smartphones. But you also want to try to keep track of your stress in a journal or some kind of log. And what you're looking for is trying to see what caused it, how you felt about it, how you behaved in response to it, and also what you did to help you feel better. So for example, there's unhealthy and healthy ways of coping with stress. Some of the unhealthy ways are listed above, right? Smoking, drinking, avoiding problems, possibly lashing out at others, overeating, undereating, withdrawing from social situations, procrastinating. And withdrawing from social situations we are going to put again because not only is it unhealthy, but at times it can be seen as a healthy coping mechanism as well. The healthy ways, obviously, are the ones we hear about all the time in the media. Exercise, talk to others, make a plan for your day, manage your time, yoga, slow down, ask people for help, try to find ways to have fun. And these are all things that are pretty great, but how do you actually implement them into your life? That's always the question. So what we want to focus on is learning healthier ways to manage the stress that you have. So there are many ways to manage and cope with stress, but they're all going to require a change. And I think that's what makes this approach in this webinar a little bit different, is that I'm asking you all to take a very active role in managing your stress. And that will mean possibly changing some behaviors and changing your reactions or changing situations so that you can manage the things coming at you a little bit better. And one way we're going to do this is by following something called the 4 A's, and we'll go into more detail in the next couple of slides. The first A is to avoid the stressor. The second A is to alter the stressor. The third way is to adapt to the stressor. And the fourth way is to accept the stressor. And I'll go into those in a little bit more detail. So you can't always avoid all the stress in your life, right? Some things just have to be addressed, and there's some things that you can't really dismiss or ignore, and they're part of your life. But those tend not to be the ones that cause people a lot of anguish during the day in and day out of their life, right? It's the ones that we can control that we want to try to control, and those are the ones where you have to set limits with those people around you as well as with yourself. And one of those things we're going to say is, you have to learn how to say no. Many people feel the need to please many people around them, and they have a very hard time when they're asked a favor. They can't say no, and they take on too much responsibility. You also want to avoid people who stress you out. Sometimes that's not possible if it's family or friends, but you do want to try to limit the time you spend around them. There's a lot of research and studies shown to show that there are people and types of relationships that can be extremely negative, and for some people, somewhat toxic. So if there are people in your life that tend to bring you down or tend to burden you with their problems, repeatedly you want to try to limit the time you spend with them to the best of your ability. Obviously, if it's family, it could be a little bit more difficult. You also want to try to take control of your environment. And by this, I don't mean simply, moving or going to a more urban location, which all could be helpful if you can't drive. I also mean things in terms of what is in your actual immediate environment. So we're a very media-connected society. If you find yourself very upset about the news or tragedies you see on the news or sad stories or what have you, as simple as just turn off the television, right? Or turn off the computer. Don't stay on Facebook. Don't sort of read about all these people and their blogs and their message boards if they are things that you're finding to be stressful for you. It sounds simple, but it is very hard to do. Also, obviously, there are some hot button topics with people socially that you may want to avoid. So for some of our patients, I think, it's very challenging, the idea of applying for disability, not applying for disability. Do they qualify? Don't they qualify? And sometimes these conversations with people who may not have any kind of chronic illness can tend to be very stressful, or explaining why you're not working or explaining why you're not driving. Those are some topics or some conversations that maybe you want to limit with people you don't know if you find that having to give those explanations out often is very exhausting. You also want to sort of pare down your to-do list, and by that we mean don't take on everything. There's a big difference between things that need to be done and things that should be done, and you want to try to make lists that are realistic for yourself throughout the course of the day. So there may be 15 things that you would like to have done on a day when you're not feeling well or on a day when you're feeling particularly stressed. Just look at that list again and try to pick up the things that are required or that need to get done for that day. Now, altering the situation. This is actually quite difficult for many people because the way you're going to alter some of these situations is to change the way you communicate or the way you operate with the people around you. So, for example, expressing your feelings. For many people, stress comes from not vocalizing their frustrations or not letting the people around them know that they're upset or they're frustrated. I'm going to ask you to try to express those feelings as best you can with the people around you. Being willing to compromise. That's another one that's quite difficult. Sometimes it's just easier to say you will do something or it's not a problem or just swallow your feelings about something because you don't want the confrontation or you don't want the argument. Again, that's something that over time could build resentment and can add to your stress. Also, being more assertive. If you find that people are asking you to do more than you can or take on more than you're capable of, obviously, we would like you to be able to have some ability to let them know, you feel as though that's asking too much, or to be more assertive with what it is that you need. And lastly, managing your time. I think, again, we're very media-connected, phone-connected society. We want to try to manage our time a little bit better and allow for some area for downtime throughout the course of the day so you can work on some of the other things we'll talk about in regards to managing your stress or coping with stress. The third A is adapting to the stressor. So if you can't change what's going on in the world around you, you can't change your diagnosis of epilepsy, you can't change the fact that you're not driving, you can't change the fact that some days you just don't feel well, or accomplishing some of those goals or going back to work isn't realistic for you right now, we want to try to change our own thinking. And this, again, can be very challenging. We want to try to reframe some of the problems, right? So, for example, if you're sitting in traffic, you want to try to be positive, right? You're in traffic, you're in a traffic jam. Instead of being angry or irritated about the fact that you're stuck here and what are you going to do when you're miserable, you could take the time as 20 or 30 extra minutes to listen to some music, or hands-free make a phone call, or something where you sort of spin that idea of the problem in some kind of positive way. Again, these are things that we can't do anything about. They're outside forces that have come upon you, but instead of complaining about them or being negative about them, if it is at all possible to reframe them, that can be very helpful. Also, trying to keep things in perspective. You want to look at the big picture, and you want to kind of have a long-term view of what's going on around you. That if today happens to be a bad day, that this does not mean that the next 20 days are going to be bad days. We want you to stay focused on the larger picture as a whole, and to try to not be stuck in the moment of what's going on. Adjusting your standards. By this I mean you don't want to keep demanding perfection from yourself. If you demand yourself to be perfect and everything to go according to plan all the time, many of us know that that's not reality. You have to make some room or some allowances for your limitations. Sometimes things don't go the way you have planned, but that's okay. You want to try to adjust your standards so that it's realistic to what anyone is able to achieve. Oftentimes people have a ridiculous amount of things they want to accomplish in a day, or if you're raising kids, the mentality that everything should be a specific way, and if you're a mom, you should be able to work and take care of the kids and keep the house clean. We want to, again, adjust some of those standards to something that's not demanding perfection. When you set yourself up to be perfect, you're going to set yourself up for some kind of flaw. And again, when you're dealing with stress and chronic illness, you have to give yourself a little bit more leeway to maybe not accomplish every single thing in that moment. And again, that's fine, because many of us aren't able to accomplish everything on our to-do list all at once. And we also want to focus on the positive. One of the best ways to do this, and clinically we do this a lot in therapy, is something called a gratitude journal. You know, if you're keeping that stress log or you're keeping the seizure log, it might be easy for you in that same piece of paper to find one positive thing in your day to write about, you know, to focus on something positive or some kind of gratitude that you're giving out there to the world of something good that happened. Most human beings tend to focus on the negative. So even though a day may be filled with 5 great events, we tend to dismiss them and focus a lot on the negative one that may not have gone according to plan. So again, a gratitude journal or something where you can keep track of some of the positive things or experiences that you have had throughout a day is a great thing to be able to then look back and reflect upon on days that may not be great or where things may not be going according to plan. The fourth A, and probably the most abstract idea, is the acceptance of things you cannot change. You know, if any of you have worked with people in substance abuse or have people in your family that have gone through any kind of long-term treatment, this seems to be one of the main messages, right? That you have to accept some of the reality that the world is going on around us and we cannot change everything that we're experiencing. Again, this doesn't mean to settle. You know, this doesn't mean to just accept your chances, accept what's handed to you and say, well, this is the end of the road and this is how it's going to be. No, we actually want to try to accept that there are certain things that you cannot change. And so you don't try to control things that are uncontrollable. You know, you don't focus only on the negative, but you try to look for the upside as best you can. And one way we really find helpful is if you can share your feelings with those around you, and if there's something bothering you, learning forgiveness. And again, these are some more of those abstract concepts. For many people, this is where therapy comes into play, and they have a very good relationship with their therapist, and they're able to share their feelings, and they're able to ask those bigger questions in terms of what are my limitations, what am I expecting from the world around me. You know, for other people, they get this from their religious affiliations, you know, that those big questions about life and why me tend to be some things that are able to be answered by your religious beliefs. For some people, they get a lot of satisfaction out of self-help books and self-help websites, And again, this is another strong theme in recovery when you're sort of giving up some control over those things that are uncontrollable around you. And the balance is to not feel as though you're just settling for whatever comes your way. And these are the more fun ones that you can incorporate into your life that seem very obvious that we hear all the time, right? Have fun, set aside time to do things and to relax. Relaxation time we talk about a lot in therapy in terms of setting up a time maybe as soon as you wake up or right before you go to bed. I often say to many of the clients that I work with, you know, we implement deep breathing skills or guided imagery skills, and we'll talk a little bit about that. You know, it's not something that you can just draw upon in a moment of crisis, right? You want to set aside a time to relax and actually get yourself and your body grounded and centered. So if you are able to do this every morning, your day can start off with a certain sense of balance. If you do it right before bed, you're able to clear your mind and fall asleep. That works great every day, but it also works when you feel anxious or stressed out in the moment, that you don't have to pull upon an experience that you only had last time you had a crisis, but that your body can regulate itself a little bit faster if you set aside some of the relaxation time every day to practice. We find a lot with epilepsy that many of our patients feel very isolated and very alone. We know that there's a huge transportation issue depending on where you live if you cannot drive. We also know that there's a lot of people who self-report that they're very isolated and feel very disconnected from even their family members, their spouses, or their friends because of the epilepsy and medication side effects and the fact that they're not working or they've given up a sense of identity. So we really stress that as best you can connect with others. And, you know, Northeast Regional Epilepsy Group often runs support groups monthly in different areas. We have a number of different activities from Purple Pumpkin Day to numerous walks throughout the state of New Jersey, Connecticut, New York. We have the National Walk in Washington, D.C. We have a lot of our patients that help with advocacy, and also the Epilepsy Foundation of New York, the Epilepsy Foundation of New Jersey. You know, the more time you spend connecting to other people with or without epilepsy, we find the more able you are to manage your feelings and your frustrations and often your stressors. You're also able to get some input from those people around you in terms of what has helped them. Similar to the gratitude journal, I'm a strong advocate in trying to do something you enjoy every day. It doesn't have to be huge. It doesn't have to be earth-shattering, but not all of us can fly to Hawaii every day and go to the beach. But if there is something that you find that you enjoy every day, that would be fantastic to incorporate. For some people, it's deep breathing or meditation. For other people, it's taking their child to school. You know, for someone else, it's cooking a meal or having a cup of coffee. Whatever it is throughout the day that you can incorporate daily into your practice also helps, again, with that idea of the gratitude journal. You know, whatever it is that you enjoy, you want to try to bring that into your everyday experience. And, of course, keeping a sense of humor, right? There's definitely something to be said for laughter is the best medicine, and there are many studies out there that show the importance of keeping a positive attitude and being upbeat and having humor in your life when dealing with any kind of chronic illness or condition, that oftentimes that positive attitude or that laughter by itself does wonders for getting your heart rate up and improving your mood overall. Also in the winter, you want to try to figure out a way to spend some time outdoors. It's been a horrible winter for all of us in the Northeast, so it's been quite difficult in trying to be outside or connecting or doing something you enjoy. But again, we want to try to incorporate some outside activities into our day as best as you can, which leads you to adopting a healthy lifestyle. Again, none of this is things you have not heard, but just a reminder that if you're physically able, we do advocate exercising regularly, even if it's walking around, moving around, a yoga class, whatever it is that you can do. Depending on where you live, there are definitely some modified yoga classes like chair yoga if you're unable to do full yoga. We do have in some of our educational seminars, I think the last one I went to in New York City, we had someone who did Pilates for epilepsy. So there are ways to modify exercise so that it can benefit you, both physically and emotionally. There's been numerous proven studies that exercise on some level daily helps improve mood and depression, that the idea of releasing those endorphins, it doesn't have to be marathon running, doesn't have to be something extremely labor-intensive, but that some sort of exercise does definitely improve one's mood. So you want to try to incorporate that with as long as your doctor says you are able. Eating a healthy diet. Again, there's a lot of information out there in regards to healthy food choices and what can and cannot be used in terms of vitamins and supplements. Again, if you're going to implement a healthy lifestyle and incorporate any of those things, you are strongly encouraged to speak to your physician about any changes or supplements you may take. Many of them do have reactions to the anti-epileptic medications. So if you are going to embark on a healthy lifestyle or a healthy diet and that's part of the plan, you definitely want to consult your physician as well as possibly a nutritionist. Reducing caffeine and sugar. For a lot of our patients on anti-epileptic medications, they already do reduce the amount of caffeine that they eat, but definitely those highs and lows that come from caffeine and sugar do not help manage any of our negative feelings, don't help with stress, doesn't help with depression, and definitely does not help with anxiety. Same thing with alcohol and cigarettes and other drugs. That's self-explanatory. If you find yourself sort of overdoing it in any of those categories, you definitely want to speak to your physician and see if there's anything we can do to help you. And getting enough sleep, right? That's another key to managing any emotion that we feel throughout the course of the day. We want to make sure that we're able to keep our body and mind sound by getting enough sleep and kind of adopting some of these healthy lifestyle tips. Tools for enhancing relaxation. All of these are things you can discuss in more detail. You can send me an email when we complete the session, but I'll give you a little bit of a brief background on all of these before we end today. So deep breathing is a technique that we use quite often in therapy to manage really any emotional imbalance, right? You want to do deep abdominal breaths. The key most often is that you breathe out longer than you breathe in. So we often tell our clients to start breathing in maybe to a count of 2, and then when you exhale, you want to exhale to a count of 3 or 4. Initially, I tell many of my clients to try this practice about 5 to 10 breaths before they go to bed, or 5 to 10 breaths before they wake up in the morning and get out of bed. For many of our patients, we find that they don't even make it to 10. They're already asleep. But definitely it's something you want to practice and you really can do anywhere. So again, you're going to breathe inhale to a count of maybe 2, depending on how well you're doing, and you want to exhale to a count of maybe 4 or longer, depending on how you're doing. Guided imagery, again, you can email me. I can send you some information specific about guided imagery. That's also a tool that we use for relaxation, where you sort of are going to basically relax your mind and your body by visualizing yourself in a different location, in a different place. That proves to be extremely useful, again, for people who are having difficulty sleeping or people who feel very stressed out or anxious. We want to try to get them to a place where they can visualize themselves in a more calm state, which helps manage those emotions. Yoga, again, there was a period of time, I believe, in New York City that we had a yoga instructor coming into the office to teach our clients about yoga. If that's ever available to you, you definitely want to take advantage of that. It is something that can be done minimally or as intensely as you want it to be. I think there's also this idea that yoga is very much a bending and bowing and contorting yourself kind of practice. That's not at all how it can be. There's also breathing yoga, and there's different types of yoga that can be accommodated to take care of our epileptic patients without any harm to them. So again, it's something you want to consult with your physician about, or look into our website to see if we'll be offering those programs. Mindfulness is a bit more complicated. It's the idea that you sort of stay present in the moment. There's been a lot of information out most recently about mindfulness helping manage stress and anxiety as well. It's a therapeutic intervention, and it's very positive in its understanding. But again, it's something that you would probably want to work with a therapist about in more detail. All of these things you can get through therapy, psychotherapy, as well as your own self-discovery. You can Google any of these things and get any more information. But you definitely want to take advantage of some of the programs that we have at Northeast Regional Epilepsy Group. We've done support groups, yoga, Pilates, knitting. They come seasonally, so you want to check on our website periodically to see if any of them are available to you or within your location. Also, if you have any ideas for things that could be helpful, definitely send me an email as well, and we can work on that also. So overall, I just wanted you all to take a little bit of time today to spend focusing on stress and what the causes are of stress. Again, you know, oftentimes it's very quick and easy for us to come up with all of the lists of things, that we can't change, that we just have to accept. But for many of those things, there are roles we play in managing our own feelings and emotions that can help us deal with the stress in a more positive way, and that can help us with more positive outcomes over time. So I hope that was helpful. And if you have any questions, please definitely send us an email, and I'll be able to address them in more detail as we go forward. Thank you.